Hello, I'm Larry Good with City TV. Welcome to this edition of Inside Santa Barbara, the city's only news magazine program. We keep you up to date on the city's most significant projects, issues, and events. For years, the city of Santa Barbara has made it a priority to make biking to work or walking to school or just simply driving around town a whole lot safer. Now they have projects on the drawing board and others in progress here on the west side to give this area of town an entirely new look and feel. Beyond her daily task of attending LaCoumbre Junior High, 8th grader Sarah Errea is on a mission to make her route to school safer, especially at Mission and Gillespie streets.
The kid was like halfway across the street, and the car just zoomed past behind it, and I saw that. I was like, yeah, that was a close call.
Mission is just very busy, and Gillespie is a racetrack also. And we just feel like this intersection is so dangerous because there isn't a crosswalk, there's not a flasher. The cars, it is a 25-mile-an-hour speed limit, but you know, nobody does it.
Design changes at the Mission and Gillespie intersection are just part of Santa Barbara's Westside Neighborhood Transportation Plan that was presented to the public at the October 24th Transportation and Circulation Committee meeting. The city has held 2 public workshops to get to this phase of the plan. The city is unveiling bicycle, pedestrian, and lighting improvements to increase mobility options and improve safety for residents who walk, bike, and drive.
Just for pedestrian and bicycle collisions alone, for a 10-year average, there was about 38 bicycle and pedestrian injuries along this corridor.
Red, yellow, and green on this heat map shows where all collisions on the west side and lower west neighborhoods happened during a 5-year period. The city has adopted a Vision Zero policy to eliminate serious and fatal traffic-related collisions by 2030. This overlay of purple and red lines and dots are sites where proposed pedestrian improvements, such as curb extensions, refuge islands, and putting down new sidewalks where they don't exist today.
Just getting across the street, as if you want to go to Bonnet Park, you want to go en route to LaCoumbre Junior High, Harding Elementary, that it is very difficult to cross and limited visibility at key intersection crossings.
That's line of sight visibility problems as well as poor lighting issues. The yellow line along Carrillo Street represents lighting upgrades already under construction that extends from Bath Street to nearly the crest of Carrillo Hill. The orange line along San Andreas Street is proposed pedestrian lighting, which runs from Mission Street to West Canna Perdido.
And this will greatly benefit all users. Again, it's not just for pedestrians, but also for cyclists, drivers. Everyone's supposed to benefit from these improvements.
Fellow Coast staff member and Westside resident Kim Stanley says many parents here don't let their children walk or bike alone to nearby Harding Elementary School. A city proposal to transform Gillespie Street and neighboring San Pasqual Street into bike boulevards would fulfill 2 critical needs.
A bike boulevard would definitely slow down traffic and give it a sense of this street is for bicyclists and for cars.
Gillespie Street would be redesigned as a priority route for bicyclists to safely navigate and still allow residents to come and go in their cars. The bike boulevard would also improve connectivity with other bike routes throughout the city and beyond.
We want to try to fill in those gaps so that parents can feel like their kids are getting to school the whole route in a safe way.
This Westside Bike Improvement Overlay shows Gillespie and San Pasqual Streets, both proposed bike boulevards, in the color lime green. The bike boulevard would extend toward the beach on one end and along Gillespie all the way to Porrazzo and LaCoumbre Junior High on the other end. The orange line running perpendicular along Mitchell-Terrena and mostly Sola Streets is the downtown bike boulevard that's already been funded and approved.
We asked, well, where's your favorite places in the neighborhood to bike in the first place? And Gillespie kept coming up as the favored street in the west side to navigate the neighborhood to go to schools or just down to the beach.
Originally, Chino Street was identified as the location for the bicycle boulevard. However, both a detailed traffic study and community feedback pointed towards Gillespie and San Pasqual streets as the preferred Westside bike routes.
And what we were also doing at the same time with staff was just analyzing the traffic patterns for cars. And what we noticed that there was in the morning from Carrillo to Chino on the way to Mitchell Torrena was much higher traffic volumes than we had originally anticipated. And there was a concern that if we keep the bicycle boulevard on Chino, that we would then have to move the traffic pattern elsewhere in the neighborhood.
The larger implications of being able to reach Goleta or UCSB from Santa Barbara without ever having to be in a high stress traffic situation where you're in conflict with vehicles.
Once the Las Positas and Modoc Roads multi-use path is constructed, the city anticipates a higher demand of bicyclists wanting to connect to La Cumbre Junior High and the West Side along Modoc between Mission and Las Positas. Residents have also expressed concern of navigating along and across Modoc Road given vehicular speeds. In spring of 2019, the city was awarded a grant to investigate the concept of a multi-use path along this section of Modoc Road. The city is in the process of getting this road right-of-way surveyed, and then engineers will draw up a multi-use path concept that the city will present to residents in early 2020 for feedback.
Modoc is seen as a street where there's higher traffic volumes and more of a need because of those speeds to separate pedestrians and cyclists from the roadway.
Construction begins next year on the $16 million Las Positas Modoc multi-use path. It will extend for 2.5 miles from Modoc to Hendry's Beach.
It's been a long-term goal of the city to be able to make this connection. It's going to provide regional connections along within the bike system, all the way out from UCSB and Goleta Beach, providing access through the Modoc and Las Positas corridors down to City College off of Cliff Drive. And then it also provides local connections for all the neighborhoods that currently don't have access for biking or walking to the beach.
For bike advocates like Ed France, it will fill a critical link in the California Coastal Trail and provide access for more users.
This multi-use path is going to have physical separation, and it's going to allow younger people, older people, people who want to jog, people who want to walk their dog. It's multi-use for a reason.
France says the multi-use path is another way that Santa Barbara city officials invest in safe, alternative options to get around.
Increasingly, we're recognizing that relying on driving to get us everywhere we may need or want to go is unhealthy for us and for the planet and for the community. The multi-use paths that are going to connect through the city of Santa Barbara and more broadly through the South Coast are a legacy that this generation is leaving for the next few generations.
The city has been very successful at obtaining active transportation program grants from the state. I think they have the highest funding per capita, so that speaks volumes.
If you'd like to learn more about the Westside Neighborhood Transportation Management Plan, just go to SantaBarbaraCA.gov/neighborhoodplans. Well, new construction has begun on the structurally deficient De La Guerra Bridge. Joshua Romero has that story.
The De La Guerra Street Bridge replacement project is located on De La Guerra Street over Mission Creek between Bath and Castillo Street. The year-long project consists of removing and replacing a 105-year-old bridge and planting new native landscaping in the surrounding area.
The De La Guerra Street Bridge was built in 1914. Through Caltrans inspections, it was deemed structurally deficient, which made it eligible for replacement through the city of Santa Barbara.
Every 2 years, Caltrans inspects bridges and assigns ratings. Based on their reporting, they indicate whether it's deemed structurally deficient and eligible for funding.
Through the bridge replacement project, we also take this opportunity to ensure we meet all city standards by replacing our sidewalks to meet standard widths. We upgrade our lighting, We also implement stormwater BMPs that treat any runoff that comes towards the site. The project will also accommodate increased flows through the bridge, and on every bridge project we have an environmental consultant which ensures that all of our means and methods for construction do not harm the environment. We have endangered species surveys that are done pre-construction. They also ensure that our creek diversion goes in appropriately and doesn't harm the environment. Through construction, we have BMPs in place in order to avoid contamination into the creek, any runoff, as well as ensure that the contractor meets all our environmental constraints per our specifications. Given the site constraints, we work closely with our neighbors to ensure that they have access during construction. We also let them know the anticipated duration, our construction work hours, and coordinate any special needs they have. We do noticing during design, right before construction, and once we have a contractor on board, we give out flyers to let them know who the key contacts are and who they can ask any questions that they may have.
Before demolition of the bridge began, a hummingbird nested itself underneath the bridge. It was recommended by the environmental consultant to not disturb the hummingbird, and demolition was suspended until the hatchlings fledged the nest.
The Guerra Street Bridge project is funded through FHWA. They fund 88.53%, with the city covering the remaining 11.47% of the project cost. What makes Santa Barbara bridge replacement projects unique is the site constraints. We coordinate with the neighbors adjacent to the bridge during design and construction, given that we're working right in their backyards.
Currently, the De La Vina Street Bridge over Mission Creek is in the preliminary engineering design phase, going through environmental studies with construction scheduled for 2021. Additionally, the Carpinteria Street Bridge over Sycamore Creek is in preliminary design and enters the design phase in 2021.
To learn more about all city bridge projects, visit SantaBarbaraCA.gov/bridge projects. Bridges are not the only infrastructure being worked on. Let's check out what's going on at several city fire stations around town.
When a fire strikes, we rely on firefighters to protect our loved ones and to save our homes. They're usually the first on scene and have dedicated their lives to saving yours. And yet their stations need some major upgrades, not only to make the stations more livable, but also to help them do their jobs protecting you. And the upgrades are thanks to MeasureC.
So MeasureC is a 1% tax increase that the city of Santa Barbara voted in order to be able to bring in additional funding for deferred maintenance projects.
The fire department has quite a few aging buildings, and some of the challenges that we faced are things like leaky roofs, aging HVAC systems, aging solar systems, aging flooring, cabinetry, all that type of stuff.
Thanks to MeasureC, windows and roofs will be repaired, new floors will be installed, and HVAC units will be replaced.
We're replacing some of the windows that don't have as much sand attenuation with windows that have a better ability to screen outside noise.
Repaired windows are critical to the sleep of firefighters, so they are rested when duty calls. And repaired roofs are just as important. Some stations will even get new roofs altogether.
We did have roof leaks in several of our stations, and it affected not just the living conditions, but affected the station itself and started to do damage. Having leaks in fire stations or your house can be a real health issue. You can start to develop mold.
While the roofs on the stations are being repaired or replaced, solar panels will also be added.
The solar panels are part of the overall city's energy program. What that does for us is it helps drive the dependence on outside electrical down. We get to utilize the solar that we earn from having the solar panels installed on our roofs. And then that relieves some of the outlay of funding that we would be spending on electrical bills elsewhere.
MeasureC will also pay for new floors in the stations.
Just in general, overall, the quality of the floors throughout the stations were pretty run down. A lot of carpet showing a lot of age, carpet pieces coming up, that kind of thing, so not particularly safe.
Up-to-date HVAC units are also on the to-do list.
We're also doing HVAC install units, so those will be new. And I want to say that those have exceeded their serviceable life, which meaning at some point they were going to deteriorate and not work.
Santa Barbara can get hot and cold in the wintertime, and we need to keep the HVAC systems up to date. And also for the efficiency of the city building, you know, we don't want to spend inordinate amounts of taxpayer dollars on heating and cooling when the system's not an efficient system.
A nice wrap-up to the renovations will be a fresh paint job on each of the stations.
I'd say that this MeasureC funding has been a substantial benefit to both the facilities program and to the community in order to be able to get things done more quickly and more efficiently, really.
This is their house and it's where they live. They cook here, they eat here, they shower here, they sleep here, so it is their home away from home.
To learn more about the fire station improvements and other MeasureC projects, visit SantaBarbaraCA.gov/MeasureC. Well, up next, how about a leisurely, comfortable stroll through one of Santa Barbara's beautiful parks? In our next story, learn about recent changes that have made our parks even better than ever.
With over 60 parks and recreation facilities in Santa Barbara, having clear rules is important. That's why the Parks and Recreation Department has implemented several changes in order to provide for the most recreation while having the highest degree of safety. To start off, all parks' closing times have been made consistent.
The new park closing times are 1/2 hour after sunset. It was established basically to allow operational efficiencies across the department. There are some exceptions to that. We do have fields that have sports lighting and so forth, so we allow people to secure a permit so they can play sports up until 10 o'clock at night when our sport lights are turned off. You know, we have 60 parks and recreation facilities in the city of Santa Barbara. We just wanted consistency, so you know, a park ranger or law enforcement or a parks employee going by a location would know that the park's closed at a certain time and then can follow up. And then from a maintenance perspective, you know, all of our staff work as early as 6 o'clock in the morning until mid-afternoon. So things that happen after hours when the park's closed can really be an impact to the operations when we open the next morning.
We had parks with different park hours. So we had parks that closed at 10 o'clock and parks that closed 1/2 hour after sunset. And there wasn't a lot of consistency. So the public didn't know which park was open when. And if we had an enforcement issue, our enforcement officers weren't quite sure which park was open when. So really to provide the same park closing time across the board really ensured consistency.
Consistent closing times are not the only change. The park's playgrounds are now specifically designated for children and their guardians.
We have 23 playgrounds in the city of Santa Barbara. They're free, they're in our park system. They're designed for ages really to certify youth. So there's a younger age and then an older age. The equipment's designed to meet kids having fun, free recreation activities. And so really what the new rule is that we're not allowing adults or individuals over the age of 18 years of age to use the playground structures. They're not designed for that. They were never intended to be designed by that. We do allow adults to accompany minors to the playgrounds to make sure that they're safe.
It's actions like this that help Santa Barbara's parks function at their highest level for everyone. Another change also promotes this mission: designated barbecue areas.
We determined we needed to be explicit in the municipal code regarding the use of barbecues in city parks and designating barbecue areas. By establishing specific rules, anyone can bring in a portable barbecue in a designated picnic area, which is essentially where there is a secure picnic table. If there's a desire to have a larger event, they can work with our department and we can find a way to make that happen for them.
We have designated barbecue locations and picnic tables in a variety of our parks. We have group permitted sites. We have sites where you can just permit picnic tables. The intent there is that the barbecues are located at that site. It makes the maintenance and cleanup and management of that site easier. It also, some of the other barbecue regulations require that the barbecue is self-contained, meaning we're not leaving coals on the ground that may cause some sort of a subsequent burn injury, and that the equipment itself, a barbecue, is not actually damaging the picnic table. Typically, most of the barbecues that you can go purchase off the shelf at Home Improvement or any typical hardware store would meet the requirements that the city has just imposed.
In addition to these 3 changes, an off-leash dog area has been added to Mackenzie Park. Now pups and their people can enjoy socializing with other pets and pet owners in a fenced-in, safe area. Because of these changes, Santa Barbara's parks will be a more enjoyable place for all who visit. The Parks and Recreation Department works hard to uphold their mission.
The mission of Parks and Recreation is to provide safe, clean, accessible parkland to the community, places to recreate, and activities for all ages in the community.
The mission of Parks and Recreation is to provide parks, open space, recreation services, programs, places for people to play, to be with their families, to celebrate, to do it where they can do it at no cost, or they can do it at a small cost if they want to participate in a sporting event, an athletic program, or a community festival. Santa Barbara has a tremendous park system that dates back to the 1850s, in fact. The need for park and open space for Santa Barbara residents has been a key part of Santa Barbara's history since its inception. And particularly in downtown areas and higher populated areas where lots are smaller, houses are smaller, people need a place to go because they may not have enough room on their own property.
We've seen different uses and misuses of our parks, and it is up to us to change with society and keep them safe for everyone. It's so important to keep our community healthy, to keep our open spaces healthy for all of us. Enjoy your parks and help us to keep them safe and clean.
Thank you, Parks and Recreation Department, for keeping our public parks safe, clean, and fun. If you'd like to learn more, go to SantaBarbaraCA.gov/parks. Well, you know, flying is considered the safest form of transportation, but that doesn't mean that airports don't have to be prepared for a major aircraft disaster. In fact, the FAA requires all airports, including the Santa Barbara Airport, to conduct drills to train and prepare for a major aircraft emergency.
Airplane that has crash landed, in this case, at the intersection of runway 15 right and taxiway Charlie.
Every 3 years, Santa Barbara's airport, in cooperation with emergency responders and local mutual aid partners, practice a full-scale disaster preparedness drill.
The goal of this drill is to test our emergency response as outlined in our airport emergency plan. That's an FAA-approved document that dictates exactly how we will respond to airfield emergencies in a real-time scenario.
In order for us to practice bringing all of the resources that would come together in a real situation, we basically have to create a real-life scenario or as close to it as we can.
The drill provides valuable training and practice. All agencies come together to coordinate their skills to prepare for an aircraft disaster.
Any opportunity that we get to train and drill with an adjacent agency such as Santa Barbara City that is stationed here at the airport gives us the opportunity to practice our skills and hone our skills. On top of that, being the fact that Santa Barbara Airport is surrounded by county fire stations, we will be the agency that will be augmenting the response from city fire in the event of an emergency that occurs out here.
It just helps us get to know each other and, see what stuff works between our agencies and what stuff we can improve on.
The lessons learned from doing a drill is invaluable because it's real world stuff that we're doing out here. Practice makes perfect, and by going through the steps and the motions, you just are more familiar. We're working side by side with the county in Montecito and Carpinteria, which we don't get to do that every day.
The first in resources are going to be county, and we work with our partners, so they're critical. So we have our truck company and our engine company by Stork, and our engine company off Los Caneros will literally be here in less than 5 minutes during a real incident.
Angle Golf is a C-130 with multiple system failures, landing runway 7. 7 souls on board, 4 plus 30 fuel remaining.
Is it what kind of alert is it?
System failures. Alert 2.
On the night of August 25th, emergency responders were called to respond to a C-130 cargo plane that crashed at the airport. A month later, the plane still sits at the airport and is clearly on everyone's mind as they train during the drill.
Fairly recently had a real-life scenario with an airplane that crashed on this airfield. So I think this time when we do this exercise, that response is fresh in our mind.
Santa Barbara City Fire Department staffs the fire station here at the airport. So just like on August 25th when the C-130 crashed, we were first on scene for that.
A lot of the folks that are here today were responders that night when that aircraft came down.
We had to actually respond and work side by side with Santa Barbara City Fire and get the job done.
They're going to take you to another location. They're going to take you to a tarp, or they're going to take you to a pre-designated area.
Volunteers play a crucial role in the drill.
We couldn't do this drill without volunteers.
My STEM teacher at my school brought the opportunity to me, and I thought it would be such a cool experience because I'm really interested in medicine.
It's really fun. It's definitely, I've always seen makeup as using a person as almost your canvas, and so I love it.
My name is Sandy, and I have a child. I have a compound fracture, which means my bone is sticking out of my leg, and I have an inconsolable infant that I am trying to take care of.
I am Isa Erdi, who's 29 years old, and is complaining of neck pain, and I just started a new job, and I'm very anxious because I need to pick up my dog at boarding.
All agencies in Santa Barbara County follow a mass casualty plan that includes the FAA-required airport emergency plan.
So we have a plan, but the plan's about 30 pages. And until you actually practice it and get the kinks out, you don't know how you're going to work together. That's why this is a really good opportunity.
I would say it's important to actually test to make sure that we're familiar with that plan. Oftentimes a plan will just sit on the shelf. You really have to come out, exercise it, make sure you're familiar, and that way when you actually have the real world scenarios, it's not as if you're doing it for the first time, you're practiced.
When the training is done, evaluators provide feedback that helps update the airport emergency plan.
We also have evaluators here from other airports, other organizations. I can speak to Fresno Fire is going to be evaluating the fire department. I was just speaking with airport operations from the Santa Maria Airport. So they're going to be providing us feedback as to how we can improve our operation. With that feedback, we'll incorporate it into an airport emergency plan update, and then we'll be prepared for the next real life and or exercise that we encounter.
We learn a lot from the drills. We learn what goes well, what goes wrong, what do we have to work on in the future, what can we reinforce and solidify from the past. Drilling for us and training for us is something that we do on a regular basis, whether it be an aircraft emergency or a structure fire or a vegetation fire. It just allows us, like I said, to hone our skills and practice our craft.
Even though we all go to a police academy, we don't train on a lot of airport disasters. And neither does Santa Barbara PD or Santa Barbara SO. So being able to come over here and learn on how to respond to these situations so that we can be a better team if this ever happens is crucial to saving lives.
It takes a community of organizers, volunteers, emergency responders, and local mutual aid to make the airport emergency disaster preparedness drill a success. This training is essential to keep our airport and community safe.
We're ready to help the community if they need us.
So the next time you fly in and out of Santa Barbara Airport, remember there's a team of professionals keeping you safe. We all need to do our part to keep our creeks and ocean clean. Let's talk with a few of our neighbors to learn more about what they do to keep them clean.
I live in the harbor, so whenever I see fishing line, plastic, paper, anything on the docks, I throw it away. If I'm in my van and getting out and there's something, you know, within a few feet radius, I always pick it up unless it's like really nasty, because it will end up in the creek or a river, and it doesn't matter if you're in our friends in the middle states, it ends up in the ocean.
How I keep the ocean clean is by picking up trash, because if we don't, then all the animals in the sea, how are they going to provide new animals to keep our ocean better?
Go out to the creeks and like pick up the trash so that the creek wouldn't take it in the water all the way to the ocean, because then like the animals would eat it.
And as you've seen, recent reports of whales, all species, washing up dead, and their stomachs are full of plastics. Two groups that we're working with at Ablett's for our film plastic recycling is the CEC, the Community Environmental Council, and also Channel Keepers. So those are two really good groups to get involved with for beach cleanups and other activities.
The most common things that I found are like bottle caps and like little wrappers and stuff, but like there's also like plastic bags that I've seen.
We generate plastic, the bags that go over the clothes. My boss, Sasha Ablett, got hooked up with Trex, and they had a program where they take back film plastic, which is like dry clean bags and grocery bags, or take out retail, also bubble wrap and other bags. So it gets picked up, turned into pellets, goes to Nevada to the Trex Corporation, and gets turned into plastic planking for decks or picnic tables, benches, what have you. And I think we're going to hit over 11,000 pounds of film plastic recycled this year.
I carry several dog waste bags with me every time I leave the house with Fred, and often I have them in my pockets anyways, and I promptly pick up dog poop as soon as it happens. Dog waste will accumulate pretty quickly, and it'll cause some dead spots on your grass if you leave it there. It's high in different phosphate and nitrogen, which are fertilizers, and so it's just not good to have in high quantities just scattered around.
Why we should keep our ocean and water clean is because if anything like gets in the water, then how are we going to swim in the ocean and have fun in the ocean if there's no animals?
Picking up my dog's waste, and there's some waste that wasn't picked up, I will use the same bag and just scoop it all up. And then commonly you will find good intentioned people who have picked up their dog waste with a bag and left it intending to retrieve it later, like on the beach, down at Hendry's and things like that. And I see that pretty often, and then people forget or don't end up walking back that way. And so I will pick those up as well. Organizations that have donated bags, and there's bags available to pick up in case you forgot yours. But I think where I see it a lot is just around downtown, like on the streets, like right outside my door. There's often, on our daily walk, just around the blocks, a lot of dog poop. So I feel like that would be a really good opportunity is in some neighborhoods just to have maybe some distribution points for dog waste bags and some public information.
When I go to the beach, I bring a bag and I pick up trash, cigarette butts, styrofoam, plastic. Fish and birds go after anything that looks like it's food, so it's an easy target. And all the different chemicals that they put into cigarettes that gets smoked through the filter, I mean, it's like battery acid, and I mean, there's like 20 or 50 different chemicals. So that stuff will leach out, and it's certainly not good for the environment and sea life. And it's 4.5 trillion cigarette butts discarded or littered every year. There's a lot of environmental groups that do beach cleanups, so I mean they're out there, you just need to look.
As a biologist, part of my job is to come out to these areas and survey them for what animals are living in that area. And waterways, wetlands, all of these areas that have this type of habitat provides incredible resources for all of the wildlife that we have out here. These areas provide travel corridors, they provide food, they provide cover, they provide the water that every animal, every bit of living organisms need. So these areas are incredibly important for all of the wildlife in the area, not just the ones living right here, but everything in the area. So anything that we do to these waterways affects animals all the way up and down the corridor and all the way down through the channel. So this water that's flowing right by us right here flows all the way down from Rattlesnake Canyon to Mission Canyon, through our city, and then out to the ocean. So everything we do here affects all of us and all of them. Every piece of litter that we throw out in these rivers gets in there, and that it affects everything from this point all the way down out into the ocean. So animals actually ingest some of that. They actually eat some of the plastics, and those plastics build up in their systems. And then as they get eaten by other animals, it travels all the way up that food chain. Each of these different items of trash that we get dispersed throughout our whole region flows down through our storm drains out into creeks like this. Just imagine that the animals living in here are already incredibly vulnerable to all sorts of different stresses. They've got the stress that there's habitat loss. They've got the stress that the water quality isn't as good as it could be. Pesticides are coming in, herbicides are coming in. Everything that we use eventually gets washed down into these drainages right here. The most vulnerable of these species need clean water so that they can survive. They're actually breathing the air out of this water, and every single breath that they take through their gills comes through, and if it's got any kind of toxin in it, it's going to be affecting them, these minute organisms living in there. So if we put oil in there, it actually covers up their gills and they're not able to breathe. If we put toxins and plastics in there, they're not going to be able to withstand the toxin in there, and they're not going to be able to survive. If they don't survive, those small organisms, all the animals that are eating those organisms aren't going to be able to survive. So we have in these areas that look beautiful, but the water quality or the habitat around them has been affected, so we've lost species out of here. So long-term effects of trash in an area, that trash eventually breaks down. The cigarette butt that has got, you know, most people don't even consider it a trash item. They throw it out without thinking of it. It's made up of plastic, it's got nicotine, it's got tobacco in it. All of those things are really toxins to some of the organisms living in these creeks. And if you can see each one of these little ponds that we've got here, each one of these little pools having its own unique assortment of organisms living in there, and you throw one little minute piece of toxin in there, that can affect all of the organisms living in that one particular area. I am a big proponent of education. You got to get the kids motivated and engaged in this issue. You've got to get them convinced, and then they go home and they convince their parents.
The reason I joined Ocean Guardians is because I help my mom sometimes clean up trash around like the creeks and side of the roads and stuff. And I wanted to do that more and also help the creeks and stuff. So I joined Ocean Guardians. And what we do is we kind of like help the creeks and stuff by like picking up the trash. And there's like this bioswale at my school. We've been like planting plants in it.
Everyone has their own part to play in this, and each individual does really have a pretty big effect. One person allowing their oil to flow down their storm drain out into a creek bed like this has an effect that goes all the way, like I said, from here all the way out to the ocean. Ecos is the study of house. And whose house is it? Sometimes we look at this place and we say, oh, it's the animal's house, and we can very easily see that it's their house. But it's not. It's our house too, and we have to take care of our house. We have to take care of all of these organisms that are living here and all of this life that we just appreciate so much. It's so easy for us to not see that we're part of it. We're absolutely part of it, and all of our actions that we do have an effect out here in these beautiful spaces, but all the way down the creek bed too. Keeping our creeks and ocean clean is not only essential to Santa Barbara residents, but also our aquatic friends. If you'd like to learn more, visit sbcreeks.org. Owned and operated by the City of Santa Barbara, Gibraltar Reservoir is one of 4 major reservoirs in Santa Barbara County.
It supplies water from the Yanez River to the city. In a town of 90,000 people, in an area that receives an average of 19 inches of rain per year, this reservoir is essential. And in 2020, we'll be celebrating its 100th birthday. 100 years old, how's that to wet your whistle?
Gibraltar has really been a critical part of our water supply mix for quite some time, starting in 1920. It has allowed us to diversify our supply mix. Prior to that, we were really all we had was groundwater. And so to be able to tap into this pristine watershed back here has been huge and has really been able to stabilize the city's water supply for the last 100 years.
In the Shumash times, population in the area was small, so creek flow and springs were able to sustain the population. But in 1782, Captain Jose Francisco Ortega settled in Santa Barbara and changed the waterscape dramatically. An initial water reservoir was built in 1806 to support the mission, and in 1889, a city engineer, George F. Wright, reported that the local water supply wasn't enough. He advised the city council to import water from the Yanez River, starting the exploration of how to store and transport water to the city of Santa Barbara.
In order to convey the water to the city, there was a need for a 3.7-mile tunnel, which was drilled and was actually the longest tunnel of its type in the world at the time. And so in 1904, they began construction of the tunnel, and that lasted several years. And the dam was actually prolonged from being built because of World War I, but eventually the dam was constructed in 1920. And so we're really excited to be celebrating the 100-year anniversary of the dam.
Santa Barbara has a diverse water supply, such as desalination, Lake Cachuma, groundwater, state water, and Gibraltar Reservoir.
So one of the critical aspects of Gibraltar is its location. It pretty much picks up about half of the watershed that feeds into Cachuma, so it's a substantially large watershed. The other flip side of having this pristine watershed is that it is vulnerable to wildfires, and we've seen our share of wildfires. It really had a pretty substantial hit over the last 12 years. What makes this particular watershed vulnerable to wildfires is it's incredibly steep, it's incredibly dry back here and rugged, and so wildfires can sweep through here unchecked. And when they do, it leaves exposed just this loose soil that is easily mobilized when we start to see rains, and that's what's really made it difficult here.
Unfortunately, this loose soil, exasperated by recent wildfires, is causing sedimentation in Gibraltar. And with increasing sedimentation, there is a decrease in its capacity.
So when Gibraltar was originally constructed, it was a 14,000 acre-foot reservoir. And over the years, it had diminished and was eventually enlarged back to 14,000 acre-feet and has been on a steady decline. So it is a significant impact. And we're continuing to look at other ways in which we can manage that sediment. A common question I get all the time is, why don't you just remove the sediment from the reservoir? And I think what is difficult for a lot of people to grasp is the magnitude of sediment that we're talking about. For example, the sediment that we got from the Zachary fire was approximately 1,500 acre-feet of sediment that came into the reservoir. To remove that sediment alone is somewhere in the $120 million range. And that is ignoring the environmental impacts and assuming you can remove and to put the soil somewhere. I have no idea where you would put it at this point, but we're just talking about the trucking and removal costs.
In times of impending storms, the city makes extra efforts to ensure the safety of Gibraltar Dam and its operational readiness.
During a storm event, we actually have a minimum of 2 staff who are working here throughout the night to make sure that the debris that come into the reservoir are properly channeled through what they call the skimmer gate, which is a smaller gate that's used to pass through some of that debris. A major challenge for operations of the dam is maintaining access. The dam is in a remote location. A lot of what the city or city staff do is maintain those roads by making sure that any washouts that occur during storms, that they're able to be cleared and that we maintain access, so that way, no matter what's going on, we're always able to continue to convey water to the city.
Staff isn't only called into action when there is a major storm event. They're constantly working to maintain Gibraltar.
During non-storm events, they're operating the intake structure, which is a series of valves that are used in order to bring water from the reservoir itself and pass it through the dam and into the city through Mission Tunnel.
So happy anniversary to Gibraltar Reservoir. 100 years of conveying water to Santa Barbara residents, and with the help of the Water Resources staff, hopefully 100 more. That's going to do it for this edition of Inside Santa Barbara. Thanks for watching. If you have any questions or comments, please give us a call at 805-564-5311. And if you missed anything, no worries. You can always catch us online at SantaBarbaraCA.gov. I'm your host, Larry Good. Remember, get involved inside Santa Barbara.